Today we are going to be reading the story called Scout's Honor by Avi. Before we begin, I want to talk about some things that we're going to need to know about for the test. First off, this week we're going to be talking about both characters and theme. Characters, remember, are people or creatures in a story that are major players and can sometimes include the narrator. This week, our story, the narrator is telling the story, and the narrator is in the story, so this is written in first person narration. The theme, if you remember from last week, is a short message or lesson about life that the writer wishes to share with the reader. Now, characters often help reveal the theme by giving some clues. These clues include what the characters say and do, what lessons the characters learn, and whether the characters change in any way. As you're reading Scout's Honor, think about the main characters and what they are learning about life and about themselves. Now, I've got a short clip here to talk about our other literary point, and that is about making predictions. So, I'll put this on full screen, and we're going to play it.
Take a look at this picture. What kind of weather do you think is coming? Why do you think so? When we make a guess based on clues, we make a prediction. A meteorologist tries to predict or tell what will happen next for our weather. When he does this, it too is called a prediction. Some people think fortune tellers can look into a crystal ball and predict what will happen in our lives. That might be fun or even a little silly, but we can make predictions in our everyday lives. Take this picture, for example. What is this man probably going to do after his cart is filled with groceries and he has everything he wants? You're right, he will pay for his groceries and then take them home. How do you know that? Well, you've probably been to the grocery store before and know that when your cart is full, you pay for your food and then you take it home and have to put it away. That is one way to make predictions. You can think about your own life and things you've done. Now look at this picture and make a prediction. What will probably happen? You can't really be wrong when you make a prediction, but your prediction has to make sense. If I asked you what would happen if you try to eat this soup while it's hot, and you said you'd probably burn your mouth, that makes sense. But if you predicted that the soup would change color and the spoon would start to dance, then that's not a great prediction because it's not very likely to happen. We can make predictions when we read, too. This helps us become better readers. Remember, you can use your life experience to make a prediction, but you can also look at a character and think about what you already know about him or her to make a prediction. Take the big bad wolf, for example. You might know that he is a nasty character, so you might predict that he would do something that's not so nice, like eat a pig. Or you might look at what he's already done. When the big bad wolf went to the first little pig's house, he huffed and he puffed and he blew it down. Then he went to the second little pig's house, and he huffed and he puffed and he blew it down. So what would you predict he would do when he goes to the third little pig's house? Yes, he will probably huff and puff and try to blow it down. You can even use clues in text or illustrations to make a prediction. Look at these kids. What do you think these kids are going to do next? That's right, they're going to go on a hike because they have hiking clothes on, backpacks, and walking sticks. The clues in the illustration gave us a pretty good idea of what the kids would be doing next. You're actually pretty good at making predictions, so let's try one out. Molly, come get in the car, said Mom. It's time to go. Dad and Bud are waiting. But I can't find my towel, Molly screamed back. I have your towel in the bag, honey. Just get your flip-flops on and let's go. It's a beautiful sunny day and we don't want to miss any of the fun. Molly slipped her flip-flops on as fast as she could and climbed into the back seat. It was going to be a long ride, but it would be worth it once she could play in the cool water. Where do you predict this family is going? Making predictions in a story is fun, but did you know that it's okay to sometimes change your prediction? Let's keep reading. The trunk was filled with everything they needed for the trip. Dad's fishing pole and tackle box were rattling in the back. Bud was playing with a flashlight in his hands. Molly knew it was going to be a long ride, so she grabbed her sleeping bag, still all rolled up, and rested her head on it. Now what do you think will happen next? At first, we thought they were going to the beach, but now we've been given more clues like fishing poles and sleeping bags. So maybe we can predict that they're going to go camping. Let's find out what happened. The family was off on their vacation. The 2-hour drive would bring them to Camp Rest and Relax, their favorite place to go every summer. Sometimes our predictions are right and sometimes they're not. Remember, it's okay if you're not right as long as your prediction makes sense. Let's review. Today you learned a prediction is a guess based on clues. There are many kinds of helpful clues in a story. They could be our life experience, a character's past behavior, or details in a text.
Okay, and we're going to stop right there with that, and we're going to get back into our story. So remember, the literary terms this week, or the literary skills, are character and theme, and also making predictions. So let's get going without any further waiting. Scout's Honor by Avi. Back in 1946, when I was 9, I worried that I wasn't tough enough. That's why I became a Boy Scout. Scouting, I thought, would make a man of me. It didn't take long to reach Tenderfoot rank. You got that for joining. To move up to second class, however, you had to meet 3 requirements. The Scout spirit and Scout participation had been cinchy. The third requirement, Scout craft, meant I had to go on an overnight hike in the country. In other words, I had to leave Brooklyn on my own for the first time in my life. Now, people that live in large cities don't often have a need to leave those cities, and this is a boy that's realizing he's going to have to go out of town for the first time in his life. Now, one of the key terms up here that he had mentioned was cinchy. Okay, if I look at the word cinchy up here, that just kind of tells me that it was easy. Okay, kind of an easy way of saying that. Since I grew up in Brooklyn in the 1940s, the only grass I knew was in Ebbets Field where the Dodgers played. Otherwise, my world was made of slate pavements, streets of asphalt or cobblestone, and skies full of tall buildings. The only thing country was a puny pin oak tree at our curb, which was noticed mostly by dogs. So they're living in New York City, and Brooklyn's a part of that. Back in the 40s, the Los Angeles Dodgers didn't exist, but the Brooklyn Dodgers did. And this boy, the only thing country he sees is this itty bitty tree that basically is peed on by dogs. Okay. I asked Scoutmaster Brankman where I could find some country. Now, whenever I saw Mr. Brankman, who was a church pastor, he was dressed either in church black or scout khaki. When he wore black, he had warned us against hellfire. When he wore khaki, he'd teach us how to build fires. Country, Scoutmaster Brankman said, is anywhere, or in his answer to my question, is anywhere that there's lots of trees and is not in the city. Many boys camp in the Palisades. Where is that? Just north of the city. It's a park in Jersey. Isn't that a zillion miles from here? Take the subway to the George Washington Bridge, then hike across. I thought for a moment, then asked, how do I prove I went? Mr. Brankman looked deeply shocked. You wouldn't lie, would you? What about Scout's Honor? Yes, sir, I replied meekly. My 2 best friends were Philip Hosfender, whom we nicknamed Horse, and Richard Mock, called Max because we were not great spellers. They were also scouts, tenderfoots like me. Horse was a skinny kid, about half my size, whose way of arguing was to ball up his fists and say, "Are you saying?" in a threatening tone. Max was on the pudgy side, but he could talk his way out of a locked room. More importantly, he always seemed to have pocket money, which gave his talk real power. I wasn't sure why, but being best friends meant we were rivals too. One of the reasons for my wanting to be tougher was a feeling that Horace was a lot tougher than I was, and that Max was a little tougher. "I'm going camping in the Palisades next weekend," I casually informed them. "How come?" Max challenged. "Scoutcraft," I replied. "Oh, that," Horace said with a shrug. "Look," I said, "I don't know about you, but I don't intend to be a tenderfoot all my life. Anyways, doing stuff in the city is for the sissies. Scouting is real camping. Besides, I like roughing it." "You saying I don't?" Horace snapped. "I'm not saying nothing," I said. They considered my idea. Finally, Horace said, "Yeah, well, I was going to do that, but I didn't think you guys was ready for it yet." "I've been ready for years," Max protested. "Then we're going, right?" I said. They looked around at me. "If you can do it, I can do it," Max said. "Yeah," Horace said thoughtfully. The way they agreed made me nervous. Now I really was going to have to be tough. We informed our folks that we were going camping overnight, which was true, and that Scoutmaster Brinkman was going with us, which was a lie. We did remember what Mr. Brinkman said about honesty, but we were baseball fans too. And since we were prepared to follow Scout law, being loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent, we figured a 900 batting average was not too bad. Now, if you play baseball or softball, you know a little bit about batting averages. Batting averages take the amount of at bats that you have, times that you go up to bat, and how factor in how many hits you have. A good Major League Baseball player hits in the 300s to 400 range, and a 900 would be a really good batting average. What they're comparing that to is, we were doing these nine other things right. This one thing that we're doing wrong isn't so bad because we're doing nine other things right. So it's kind of a unique way of thinking. So Saturday morning, we met at the High Street subway station. I got there first. Stuffed in my dad's army surplus knapsack was a blanket, a pillow, and a paper bag with 3 white bread, peanut butter, and jelly sandwiches. That is, lunch, supper, and a Sunday breakfast. My pockets were full of sticks and matches, or of stick matches. I had an old flashlight, and since I lived by the Scout motto of being prepared, I brought along an umbrella. Finally, being a serious reader, I had the latest Marvel family comic books. Horse arrived next, his arms barely managing to hold on to a mattress that seemed twice his size. As for food, he had 4 cans of beans jammed in his pockets. Max came last. He was lugging a new knapsack that contained a cast iron frying pan, a packet of hot dogs, and a box of saltine crackers, plus 2 bottles. One bottle was mustard, the other celery soda. Now, celery soda does sound weird, but on the East Coast, it's a celery flavored soda, and that is something to this day you can get. He also had a bag of Tootsie Rolls and a shiny hatchet. To build a lean to, he explained. Max's prized possession, however, was an official scout compass. It's really swell, he told us. You can't ever get lost with it. Got it at the scout store. And here's kind of an example of what he has. A compass is a device used to determine your direction. And as you probably know, the needle here will most generally point to the north. And they're going to have some issues with that later. "I hate that place," Horace informed us. "It's all new, nothing real." "This compass is real," Max retorted. "Points north all the time. You can get cheaper ones, but they point all different directions." "What's so great about the north?" Horace said. That's always the way to go, Max insisted. Says who? I demanded. Brakeman, dummy, Horace cried. Anyway, there's always an arrow on maps pointing the way north. Cowboys live in the West, I reminded them. They didn't care. And this is going to be a point of contention because their thought is that because the arrow points one direction, that that's the way they need to go. When really that helps you just orient the compass. And when you go out to Chain of Lakes later this year, we'll be doing some orienteering and you'll find out how to use a compass. On the subway platform, we realized we didn't know which station we were heading for. To find out, we studied the system map, which looked like a noodle factory hit by a bomb. The place we wanted to go, north, was at the top of the map, so I had to hoist Horace onto my shoulders for a closer look. Since he refused to let go of his mattress or the tin cans in his pocket, it wasn't easy. I asked him in a kindly fashion to put the mattress down. No sooner did he find the station, 168th Street, than our train arrived. We rushed on, only to have Horace scream, "My mattress!" He had left it on the platform just before the doors shut. He and I leapt off. Max, however, remained on the train. Helplessly, we watched as his horror stricken face slid away from us. "Wait at the next station," I bellowed. "Don't move." The next train took forever to come. Then it took even longer to get to the next stop. There was Max. All around him, like fake snow in a glass ball, were crumbs. He had been so nervous he had eaten all of his crackers. "Didn't that make you thirsty?" I drank my soda. I noticed streaks down his cheeks. Horace noticed them too. "You been crying?" he asked. "No," Max said. "There was this water dripping from the tunnel roof. But you said you don't move, but you said don't move, right? Well, I was just being obedient." By the time we got on the next train with all of our possessions, we had been traveling for an hour, but we had managed to only go one stop. During the ride, I got hungry. I pulled out one of my sandwiches. With the jelly soaked through the bread, it looked like a limp scab. Horace, envious, complained he was getting hungry. "Eat some of your canned beans," I suggested. He got out one can without ripping his pocket too badly. Then his face took a mournful look. "What's the matter?" I asked. "Oh, I forgot to bring a can opener." Max said, "In the old days, people opened cans with their teeth. You saying my teeth aren't strong? I'm just talking about history." "You saying I don't know history?" Always kind, I plopped half my sandwich into Horace's hand. He squashed it into his mouth and was quiet for the next 15 minutes. It proves something I'd always believed. The best way to stop arguments is to get people to eat peanut butter sandwiches. They can't talk. Then we became so absorbed in our Marvel family comics, we missed our station. We got to it only by coming back the other way. When we reached street level, the sky was dark. "I knew it," Max announced. "It's going to rain." "Don't worry," Horace said. "New Jersey is a whole other state. It probably won't be raining there." I brought an umbrella. I said smugly, though I wanted to make it sound helpful. As we marched down 168th Street heading for the George Washington Bridge, we looked like European war refugees. Every few paces, Horace cried, "Hold it!" and adjusted his arms around his mattress. Each time we paused, Max pulled out his compass, peered at it, then announced, "Heading north." I said, "The bridge goes from east to west." "Maybe the bridge does," Max insisted with a show of his compass, "but guaranteed we are going north." About then, the heel of my left foot, encased in a heavy rubber boot over an earth-crusted Buster Brown shoe, started to get sore. Things weren't going as well as I'd hoped. Cheerfully, I tried to ignore the pain. So these boys are having a whale of a time. First of all, they can't get on the right train. They get on the right train, they get separated, and then they get back together, and then they miss their stop, and they get hungry. And it doesn't sound like they have a lot of food. And one of them has food in a can that they can't open because he didn't bring a can opener. We've got the narrator now is getting a sore foot from walking in his Buster Browns, which are a type of shoe, and a rubber boot. It's starting to rain. They don't really know what direction they're going because one's insistent on going north, but the bridge is going east to west. This is not doing well, and it's I don't know if they're going to make it the night. The closer we drew to the bridge, the more immense it seemed, and the clouds had become so thick you couldn't see the top or the far side. Max eyed the bridge with deep suspicion. I'm not so sure we should go, he said. Why? Maybe it doesn't have another side. We looked at him. No, seriously, Max exclaimed. They could have taken the Jersey side away, for repairs. Cars are going across, I pointed him. They could be dropping off, he suggested. We would hear them splash, Horse argued. I'm going, I said, trying to look brave. I started off on my own. My bravery didn't last long. The walkway was narrow. When I looked down, I saw only fog. I could feel the bridge tremble and sway. It wasn't long before I was convinced the bridge was about to collapse. Then a ray of hope struck me. Maybe the other guys had chickened out. If they had, I could quit because of them. I glanced back. My heart sank. They were coming. Now, it's kind of unique here. In what ways do the boys try to hide their fear? Well, one of them tries to hide their fear by getting angry at everybody. The narrator tries to hide his fear by hoping that the other people will chicken out so he can chicken out too. They're just a motley group here. After they caught up, Horse looked me in the eye and said, if this bridge falls, I'm going to kill you. A quarter of a mile further across, I gazed around. We were completely fogged in. I think we're lost, I announced. What do we do? Horse whispered. His voice was jagged with panic. That made me feel better. Don't worry, Max said. I've got my compass. And he pulled it out and said, north is that way, he said, pointing in the direction we had been going. Horse said, you sure? A scout compass never lies, Max insisted. We lied, I reminded him. Yeah, but this is an official scout compass, Max returned loyally. Come on, Max said, and marched forward. Horse and I followed. In moments, we crossed a metal bar on the walkway. On one side, a sign proclaimed New York. On the other, it said New Jersey. Holy smoke, Horse said with reverence as he straddled the bar. Talk about being tough. We're in two states at the same time. It began to rain, Max said. Maybe it'll keep us clean. You saying I'm not clean? Horse shot back. Ever friendly, I put up my umbrella. We went on, Max on one side, Horse on the other, me in the middle, trying to avoid the growing puddles. After a while, Max said, would you move the umbrella? Rain is coming down on my neck. We're supposed to be roughing it, I said. Being in the middle isn't roughing it, Horse reminded me. I folded the umbrella up so that we would all get soaked equally. Hey, I cried, look! Staring up ahead, I could make out toll booths and the dim outline of buildings. Now, the boys' definitions of roughing it seems to be going without, possibly without food. Obviously, if everybody gets wet, or one person gets wet, everybody gets wet. I don't really know if they understand what roughing it means, but in their eyes, it means just kind of being miserable, it sounds like. Okay. Last one off the bridge is a rotten egg. Horse shouted and began to run. The next second, he tripped and took off like an F-36 fighter plane. Unfortunately, he landed like a Hellcat dive bomber as his mattress unspooled before him and then slammed into a big puddle. Max and I ran to help him. Horse was damp. His mattress was soaked. When he tried to roll it up, water cascaded like Niagara Falls. Better leave it, Max said. It's what I sleep on at home, Horse said as he slung the soaking, dripping mattress over his shoulder. This only gets better. Now his mattress that he uses at home is sopping wet. When we get off the bridge, we were in a small plaza. To the left was the roadway full of roaring cars. In front of us, aside from the highway, there was nothing but buildings. Only to the right were there trees. North is that way, Max said, pointing toward the trees. We set off. How come you're limping? Horace asked me. My foot was killing me. All I said, though, was, how come you keep rubbing your arm? I'm keeping the blood moving. We approached the grove of trees. Wow, Horace exclaimed, country. But as we drew closer, what we found were discarded cans, bottles, and newspapers, plus an old mattress spring. Hey, Max cried, sounding relieved. This is just like Brooklyn. So they find their campsite that they're going to is just full of garbage. And I think it's funny where Max says, hey, this is just like Brooklyn. Yeah. I said, let's find a decent place, make camp, and eat. It was hard to find a campsite that didn't have junk. The growing dark didn't help. We had to settle for the place that had the least amount of garbage. Max said if we build a lean-to, it'll keep us out of the rain. He and Horace went a short distance with the hatchet. Seeing a tree they wanted, Max whacked at it. The hatchet bounced right out of his hand. There was not even a dent in the tree. Horace retrieved the hatchet and checked the handle, or checked the blade. Dull, he said. Think I'm going to carry something sharp and cut myself? Max protested. They contented themselves with picking up branches. I went in search of firewood, but everything was wet. When I finally gathered some twigs and tried to light them, the only thing that burned was my fingers. Meanwhile, Horace and Max used their branches to build a lean-to directly over me. After many collapses, which didn't help my work, they finally got the branches to stand in a shaky sort of way. And a lean-to would just be like a building or a hut made out of branches. Uh-oh, Horace said. We forgot to bring something for a cover. Max eyed me. Didn't you say you brought a blanket? No way, I cried. All in favor of using the blanket? Horace and Max cried, Aye! Only after I built up a mound of partially burned matchsticks and lit them did I get the fire going. It proved that where there's smoke, there doesn't have to be much of a fire. The guys, meanwhile, draped my blanket over their branch construction. It collapsed twice. So now they've got this fire that's doing more smoking than it is burning, and they've got a blanket over these sticks that keeps falling down. So it's not going well for the boys right now. About an hour after arrival, the three of us were gathered inside the tiny space. There was a small fire, but more light came from my flickering flashlight. No more rain, Horace said with pride. Just smoke, I said, rubbing my stinging eyes. We need a vent hole, Horace pointed out. I could cut it with my hatchet, Max said. It's my mother's favorite blanket. And you took it, Max said. I nodded. You are tough, Horace said. Besides having too much smoke in our eyes and being wet, tired, and in pain, we were starving. I almost said something about giving up, but as far as I could see, the other guys were still tough. Max put his frying pan atop my smoldering smoke. After dumping in the entire contents of his mustard bottle, he threw in the franks. Meanwhile, I bolted down my last sandwich. What am I going to eat? Horace suddenly said. Your beans, I reminded him. Max offered up his hatchet. Here, just chop off the top end of the can. Oh, right, Horace said. He selected a can and set it in front of him, levered himself onto his knees, and then swung down hard. There was an explosion. For a stunned moment, we just sat there, hands, face, and clothing dripping in beans. Suddenly, Max shouted, food fight, and began to paw the stuff out and fling it around. Having a food fight in the cafeteria is one thing. Having one in the middle of a soaking wet lean-to with cold beans during a dark, wet New Jersey night is another. In seconds, the lean-to was down, the fire kicked over, and Max's frankfurters dumped on the ground. The food! Max screamed and began to snatch up the franks. Coated with mustard, dirt, grass, and leaves, they looked positively prehistoric. Still, we wiped the franks clean on our pants, then ate them. The franks, that is. Afterwards, we picked up the beans off of each other's clothes, the way monkeys help friends get rid of lice. For dessert, Max shared some Tootsie Rolls. After Horace swallowed his 16th piece, he announced, I don't feel so good. The thought of his getting sick was too much. Let's go home, I said, ashamed to look at the others. To my surprise and relief, nobody objected. Wet and cold, our way lit by my fast fading flashlight, we gathered our belongings. Most of them, anyways. As we made our way back over the bridge, gusts of wind, blown rain pummeled us until it felt like a used up punching bag. By the time we got to the subway station, my legs were melting fast. The other guys looked bad too. Other riders moved away from us. One of them murmured, "Juvenile delinquents." To cheer us up, I got out my comic book, but they had congealed into a lump of red, white, and blue pulp. So his comic book got so wet it's just all stuck together. With the subways running slow, it took hours to get home. When we emerged from the high street station, it was close to midnight. Before we split up to go to our own homes, we just stood there on a street corner, embarrassed, trying to figure out how to end the day gracefully. I was the one who said, "Okay, I admit it. I'm not as tough as you guys. I gave up first." Max shook his head. "No, I wanted to quit, but I wasn't tough enough to do it." He looked at Horace. Horace made a fist. "You saying I'm the one who's tough?" he demanded. "I hate roughing it." "Me too," I said quickly. "Same for me," Max said. Horace said, "Only thing is, we just have to promise not to tell Mr. Brinkman." Grinning with relief, we simultaneously clapped hands. "No matter what," Max reminded us, to which I added, "Scout's honor." So they basically said they wouldn't lie about telling a lie. So they're going to tell a lie. So that's kind of weird. One thing that's kind of unique is our narrator thought that he was like being the wimpiest guy in the world, but the other guy's like, "Oh man, I wasn't tough enough. I hated it." And they all kind of agreed that they didn't make it. But one thing that I'm looking here is they're getting back to their house after midnight. So didn't they technically spend the night outside? So okay, well, at this time, what I'd like you to do is close down and go back to the questions and answer the two questions for the story. Please, please, please make sure that your questions are answering the actual question being asked, not one that you make up. And also make sure that you are um, using races, restate. A lot of you are losing points because you're not restating questions. Give a full answer and then give detail from the story, not detail from your mind that you think. Make sure you can find it in the story. And it really goes a long way if you can say, hey, like on line 300 to 305, they said this. So that does help a ton on your writing. So good luck, and this will be due on Friday. Goodbye.